for joining us. Justice, I presume you didn't sit with Raymond Zondo when you were on the bench, but he has been a jurist for 25 years, and you probably know him in some capacity. What's your take on the decision by the President to appoint him as the new Chief Justice?
Yes, in fact, we shook hands as I was leaving. He was coming in after my 15 years. And I'd often sat in appeals from decisions of his from the Labour Court and elsewhere, and a very, very respected judge in the judiciary. But I'd like to mention that the President made two announcements, and I think they have to be seen together. So I think Raymond Zondo has earned his seat. He's been an impeccable judge. He's done extraordinary work on the Commission, brought honour, I think, to the judiciary generally, but he's there for another 29 months. And I think it's very clear that I don't want to say that the President was killing two birds with one stone. That's a rather ugly metaphor. He was feeding two birds with one hand. He indicated that President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, Justice Meyer, would be nominated by him as Deputy Chief Justice. So I see the role of Zondo as not only being to steer the Constitutional Court, the judiciary in this period, but to ensure that Justice Meyer is comfortable and she learns the ropes from inside. It's a very extraordinary court, the Constitutional Court, in all sorts of ways. And this will give her 2 years of getting to know her colleagues, getting to study all the ramifications of the work of a Chief Justice. She's not coming in cold if the President wishes to nominate her as Chief Justice in 2 years' time. It makes a lot of sense from a functional point of view to announce the confirmation that Raymond Zondo will be the Chief Justice, and at the same time mention that the Deputy Chief Justice he will nominate will be Mandisa Meyer. I think it would be very good for the stability of the Constitutional Court, provide a good continuity, and fill in with tradition, because Pius Lange succeeded Arthur Chaskelson after he'd been on the court for some time. Then Sandile Ngobo took over from Pius Lange. He'd been on the court, he knew its inner workings. Mogoeng had been sitting on the court as well, and he was able to take over the reins from Sandile Ngobo. So it will be carrying on in that very pragmatic tradition of choosing somebody, if the choice is to be made down the line, of Mandisa Meyer. And I mentioned this today happens to be the International Day of Women Judges, that's celebrated as such by the United Nations. I think it's a very marvelous day. A very marvelous day to hear that Mandisa Meyer is going to be nominated as Deputy Chief Justice with every prospect of becoming Chief Justice in due course.
Thanks so much for pointing that out for us. We didn't know that here in the studio. So that's going to be an important, as you say, a very serendipitous day to have that announcement, and a prudent decision then in terms of mentoring Justice Meyer and also showing Ramaphosa's independence, as Zondo was fourth on the list of recommendations by the Judicial Service Commission. But I wanted to ask you about what it takes to run the Constitutional Court efficiently in terms of handing out, making sure that judgments are handed down on time and that the court itself is not overwhelmed. You've seen transitions, especially one from Chaskelson to Pius Lange. How difficult is it?
Well, it's a huge responsibility. I wouldn't use the term mentoring. She's very smart, very, very capable, but giving her a chance to get to know the ropes, to see the magnitude of the role of the Chief Justice, not simply in the Constitutional Court, and to get the feel of working with that very, very special team and being able to help provide for the other replacements that will come onto the court in time. What you need is somebody with a multitude of skills. Being a good lawyer, absolutely important, but you need to be a strong human being, You need to be a fair human being. You need to be able to work collegially. You need a lot of what a Canadian Chief Justice told me was, he called judicial statecraft. The way you deal with the public, connect with the public. And you also need administrative skills and the capacity to delegate and to be the public face of the judiciary. So it's a whole range of things. And some people are very, very strong in certain areas, but rely on their deputies to help in other areas. Some people are all round. As far as I know, both these judges, Justice Zondo is a good all-rounder in all the respects I've mentioned, and future, we hope, or many of us hope, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, Mandisa Maya also has all those skills, and it will give her a chance to really feel her way into the institution and not have a kind of a culture shock. It is a bit of a culture shock moving from the Supreme Court of Appeal to the Constitutional Court with its own modalities and its own intricacies. I think that we are blessed in South Africa to have such fine jurists high up in the judiciary.
Justice, I certainly didn't mean that Raymond Zondo was going to mentor her in Mandisa Maya in a patronizing way. What I meant was to navigate that very different environment and that different space administratively from the Supreme Court of Appeal to the Constitutional Court. But I do feel too that it's about time that there is a female Chief Justice, and so it was certainly a prudent choice that he'd made. And thank you so much for your insight, as always, into the inner workings of that court, which has now got so many more complications and so many more cases on its hands because of the change of its jurisdiction and what it can and cannot hear. Thank you so much to former Constitutional Court Justice Judge Albie Sachs.